This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and my co-host, Mr. Cam Cathcart. What's up, Cam?
Dude, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How's the babies coming along in the tummy?
Dude, perfect. We did she's 21, maybe 22 weeks, but we did our 20-week checkup the other day and they are healthy. We got to do the intense ultrasound where you get to see their faces. And it's
fun.
Insane, dude. It's so much fun. We have names picked out, but I'm not telling people.
Here's my joke for the day. I hope one is named Kate and the other one Duplicate. Get it, man? That's pretty good, right?
What has 5 toes and isn't your foot?
I don't know.
My foot.
That's stupid. That's stupid. All right, man. You know what's not stupid? Today's show. Today we're speaking with an amazing author, speaker, writer, investor, not in the real estate space, though. His name is Sahil Bloom. Sahil is he's got a bi-weekly newsletter. It's called The Curiosity Chronicle. He's also does early stage investment fund stuff, but he wrote this book. The book is absolutely crushing right now, and it's actually really, really good. So we're going to interview Sahil today on the show. So without, I don't know, we don't need to kick this any longer. Let's just bring him in.
Just everybody should buy this book. It's life-changing. It is incredible.
Super good. All right, let's get to it. Sahil Bloom. Dude, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Dude, your book is absolutely blowing up right now. I feel like every person I know recommend it. So I got a copy of it and it is really, really good. You hit New York Times bestseller, I heard, multiple weeks in a row.
6 weeks in a row now. We got to keep the streak alive.
Dude, that's incredible. I love it. Well, everybody go out and get the book. Obviously, we're going to talk about it today. But I actually really, really love the book. And it's called The 5 Types of Wealth. We're going to talk about all 5 today. I want to actually start the same way that you started the book. And that is this idea of, I think the quote was, you are going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. So why did you start the book that way? And what does that mean to you?
You got to hit people over the head right at the beginning, man. Begin with the end in mind. I mean, that quote and that conversation that sparked it was really the turning point in my own life. I had spent the first 7 years of my career marching through the ranks in the world of investing. I worked at a private equity fund. I was very much chasing all of the definitions of success that we are told to chase. The external affirmations, the status, the material things, the money. I was convincing myself basically day in, day out that my happiness, my fulfillment as a human being was on the other side of some financial milestone, making X million dollars, getting whatever promotion, whatever title, trying to hit Forbes 30 under 30, whatever the new thing is that you're building up as your arrival, if you will. And along that whole path, I was actually achieving a lot of those things, but at the expense of the rest of my life. My relationships had really started to suffer. I was living 3,000 miles away from my parents, who were getting older. My sister and my relationship had ground to a halt. My wife and I, unfortunately, were struggling to conceive at the time. That was really creating strain in our life. I was drinking 6-7 nights a week. My mental and physical health were in disarray. All of these other areas of my life had started to suffer while, frankly, on the outside looking in, you would have said I was winning the game. And in early 2021, I had started to have this sensation that if that was what winning felt like, I had to be playing the wrong game. And it all came to a head in that one conversation. I went out for a drink with an old friend in May of 2021. We sat down and he asked how I was doing. And I told him that it had started to get difficult living so far away from my parents who were getting older, living on the East Coast. We were 3,000 miles apart. And he asked how old they were. And I said mid-60s. And he asked how often I saw them. And I said about once a year. And he just looked at me and said, okay, so you're going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. And I just remember feeling like I had been punched in the gut. The idea that the amount of time you have left with the people that you care about most in the world, is that finite and countable that you can literally place it onto a few hands, just shook me to the core. And in that moment, I realized that if something didn't change, we were going to end up in a place where we didn't want to be. That my entire definition of success, of what it meant to build a wealthy life, was incomplete. That I was kind of chasing the one thing at the expense of everything else. And so that moment was the moment that sparked this, entire chain reaction. It was the inflection point, if you will, to rebuilding our life around this new definition, these new pillars of how we thought about what success would look like for us.
Yeah, it's beautiful,
Amazing.
man. Really, really good. And so you
Yeah.
came up with 5 types of wealth. Why don't do you mind explaining what the 5 are real quick? And then we'll maybe just kind of dive into each one and dig into it.
Yeah. So the 5 types of wealth. Time wealth is the first one. This is all about freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, where you spend it when you trade it for other things. It's fundamentally about awareness and action. Awareness of time as your most precious asset, the one thing that you cannot get back. That idea that the amount of time you have with the people you care about most is finite, it's impermanent. And then action against that awareness. Social wealth is the second type. This is all about your relationships, the few close, deep relationships, and then your broader connections to things that extend beyond the self, your broader communities, spiritual communities, local communities, whatever those might be. Mental wealth is the third type. This is about purpose. It's about growth. It's about creating the space necessary in your life to actually wrestle with some of the bigger picture, more fundamental, unanswerable questions, whether through spirituality, meditation, solitude, what have you. Physical wealth is the fourth type. This is about your health and vitality, taking the controllable actions on a daily basis to fight the natural decay that your body will go through as you get older. And then the fifth type is financial wealth, which is the one that we all know about, money, but with the specific nuance of really understanding your definition of enough, what it means to have enough financially, with the recognition that your expectations are your single greatest financial liability. If your expectations rise faster than your assets, you will never feel wealthy.
Yeah, there's a quote I wrote down. I actually wrote a bunch of quotes from the book down, but one of them was on that. It said, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, right there. I've seen it happen repeatedly, both in my own life and in the lives of those around me. That thing you once longed for becomes a thing you can't wait to upgrade. Man, that hit me so hard in terms of like the financial wealth. Like if that's how you operate in life, right? Like you're never going to be wealthy enough because you always just want to upgrade to the next thing.
It is, that is one of the most powerful. I'm glad you pulled that out. I actually haven't seen that many people pull it out. I think it's one of the most powerful and one of the most challenging things to recognize as a human being because it applies to every area of your life. I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was working on something for the book launch. I was in my office, focusing, really locked in. And my son, who's 2.5 years old, came barging into my office. And he's knocking things over. He's jumping up and around. He wants to play. He's a 2.5-year-old doing toddler stuff. And I started to have this whole train of thought that was so annoyed. I was like, why is he doing this? This is so annoying. Doesn't he know that I'm focusing? Shouldn't he just get out of here? All these things, this negative train of thought. And in that moment, I snapped myself out of it for a second. And I took myself back to 4 years earlier when my wife and I were struggling to conceive. We were in the middle of this 2-year infertility journey. I had prayed every single night that we would one day have a healthy child. And there I was in that moment complaining about the exact thing that I had prayed for. And it was a reminder to me of that exact fact that sometimes in life, the things you pray for become the things that you complain about if you let them. If you don't have the awareness to snap yourself out of it and remind yourself that sometimes you are literally living out the prayers of your younger self.
That's so true, man. My wife and I also, we struggled with the infertility for a long time. It was 10 years before we finally had our first kid. And yeah, I mean, same thing. Every day prayed for those kids, like to have a kid someday. And yeah, that hit me hard, man. Cause like, yeah, even this morning, I'm like rolling my eyes at my kid wanting to play Minecraft and I'm not letting him because it's before school. And like, dude, I asked, like, I would have begged for that 10 years ago, just begged for it. So,
oh, dude.
Yeah.
I remember I was feeling, this was a couple months ago, where the real estate industry has just been weird lately. And I was feeling sorry for myself and wasn't going the way that I wanted it to. And one of the coolest things that happened was I was going through some old journals and I write my prayers down sometimes. And so like in that I was asking God, like, I want a team. I want to be able to work remotely. I want to be the visionary and have an integrator and the employees under that. And and literally, and I said, God, I want to like, give me a burden to carry, like a heavy burden to carry, because I wanted that responsibility. And as I was reading that, I literally just started crying because I'm like, I have exactly what I was literally writing down in my journal 5 years ago praying for. And now I'm mad about it. And I'm like, I just want to quit and go move into the country on 700 acres and not see anybody or not think about anything. I'm like, I have what I asked for. But I do have a question for you. Like, with these five types of wealth, is there one in your mind that you say, focus on this and it will lead to everything else? Or is it cohesive where it's like they all grow at the same pace?
It definitely isn't growing at the same pace. You know, the way that I think about this is that your life has seasons, and what you focus on or prioritize during any one season of your life will change.
Mhm.
I would argue that for most people, your 20s and early 30s are the financial wealth building season of your life. The real time to like lock in and focus on building that financial foundation, because we all know, everyone listening to this podcast understands the eighth wonder of the world is compounding. And if you set yourself up early and you start that engine and you don't interrupt it, I mean, real estate investors know this better than anyone. Get rich slowly, right? Like compounding is the thing. And so that season of financial wealth building and getting that engine going, that is going to be a focus during that early season. But then you're going to have a season when your kids are 5 years old, and you may want to ease back on that one and lean into social wealth, lean into the depth of those relationships with the people you care about. Your parents are getting older, your kids are young. You know, you may have a season of refinding your purpose later in life. These things change is the point. And so trying to apply a one size fits all to the dynamic nature that is our lives is very challenging. Time wealth is the sort of undercurrent to all of it, or the foundation around all of it, because it is about controlling what you get to invest your time in. It's not about, by the way, having free time, you know, coming out your ears. If that's what you want, then that is your version of time wealth. For me, I really like feeling gainfully employed on a bunch of different projects. I like feeling like my day is structured and I have a bunch of things that I'm working on that I care about. That's my choice. That is me having time wealth. It's just that I'm choosing to invest the time into things that hopefully matter and that I care about. And that includes my family and relationships. That includes my health. That includes my work projects that I care about. So really finding the way to unlock that piece, feeling like you are more in control of your time, I would say becomes the main pursuit after you get through that financial wealth building sort of grind season of the early years.
Yeah, it's really good. Well, let's dig into the time wealth a little bit. Like, what are some maybe tactical or practical things a person can do, and some of the things you talk about in the book, maybe, or just in your own life, to just improve the amount of time wealth they have?
I would say that the first thing I would do with anyone that I was working with around this is this exercise that's in the Time Wealth Guide section that I call my energy calendar. The reason I talk about energy so much, whether it's in the book or more broadly in any content writing that I put out, is because your outcomes follow your energy. When you lean into things that are creating energy, that actually pull you, that you feel interested in, that are lifting you up, that is when you generate the 10, 100, 1000x outcomes that create the step function changes in your life. That's where you unlock those asymmetries, where you're putting in the couple of units of input for 100 units of output. You are not going to find that by chewing glass on low energy activities. You sometimes have to chew glass to unlock and to find the asymmetries that exist. But after you find them, you want to just deploy your units of energy into those. The energy calendar is a way to start identifying what those things are. So what you do is at the start of a week, say this is a Monday, look at your calendar from the day after the day is complete and color code the activities from the day according to whether they created energy. You mark them green, meaning you felt lifted, you felt energized, you felt pulled towards the thing, mark it green. If it was neutral, mark it yellow. And if it felt draining, if it physically drained you, mark it red. Do that for a week. By the end of the week, when you zoom out, you will have a very clear visual perspective on the types of activities that are creating energy versus draining energy in your calendar. That perspective, that awareness, allows you to start slowly creating changes over a period of time, to lean away from the energy drainers, either through spending less time on them or through adjusting them so that they become more neutral or energy creating, and lean into the things that are creating energy, the energy creators in your calendar. And what happens is, A, you start feeling better because you feel more energized, more of your time is spent on energy creators. And B, the outcomes start going like this because you're leaning into the things that you actually feel pulled towards.
So I have a question around that, because when I was reading that, I was like, and I was thinking through some of those things, like things that bring me energy. Working out. I love working out. I don't do it much because it doesn't make me money. And I have to
Yes,
do that.
it
Like
does.
things that bring me,
Yes,
and I
it
agree
does.
with you. It does in a way. Yes. Another great example is like we went to Maui Baruco the other night, and there was a live band playing, and I was dancing with my kids, and I left there on such a high. It's like, this was amazing. How would you tell somebody like me, where it's like, okay, so here's the things that bring you energy. But I still have to make money. How do I leverage that for money making?
So the first thing I would say, the physical side, the working out, 100% makes you money. Like, this is one of my strongest held beliefs. There is no such thing as a loser who wakes up at 5 a.m. and works out. That has nothing to do with the fact that the workout or the 5 a.m. makes you money. I'm not like one of these people that's like, oh, you have to wake up early to make money. It's everything to do with the ripple effect that has into other areas of your life. When you work out, when you're taking care of yourself, you show up better in every other situation of your life. It makes you money. I guarantee it. The other piece is you're only looking right now at areas of your life that are personal. So you're talking about personal life things that create energy for you. You should definitely lean into those. The people that create energy in your life are the people you should lean into. The ones who drain energy, like those relationships where you feel like you got to take a shower after spending time with them, you should distance yourself from those people. I guarantee your life will get better. But on the professional side, I would really take a close look at it. What elements of the work you are doing today are really creating energy for you? Like in the real estate world, I've talked to friends about this. Like, is it the deal diligence part? Is it the development part? Is it the ground up builds? Is it the refurbs? Like, which actual aspect of the work you are doing do you really feel that like, oh, I'm excited, I feel pulled towards this? And which parts feel like chewing glass? And how can you start to adjust, make slow, steady changes to lean into more of those things that are creating that lift sensation?
You know what is mind blowing about this, or at least was to me years ago when I first, like the very first hire I ever did was because of this. I did like an energy audit. I thought, what feels heavy? What's the worst thing I do? And I said, talking on the phone to a tenant. Just can't stand it. It feels awfully heavy to me. So then I hired my mother-in-law to answer phones. I paid her like $250 a month, something like that. I was like, you just answer phones. She's like, wait, you're going to pay me to answer phones all day? I'd do that for free. Because that brings her energy, what drained me. And so that was like the first glimpse I had into the fact that all energy draining and giving is not the same to each person, right? So if you can build a team or a company around the things that bring each person energy, and that's their specialty, now all of a sudden everybody gets to work on what they bring that brings them energy, and I don't have to do almost any of it anymore. And that just blew my mind, and it's worked over and over and over. So like I'm constantly quitting everything I do that doesn't bring me energy, and I'm not perfect at it.
And you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. Like what you just said is that is like the golden unlock around all of this, is when you realize that just because something's energy draining for you doesn't mean it's energy draining for everyone. My chief of staff, I don't even want to say this publicly. Like he could charge me, and I mean, he could ask for anything and I would have to pay him it, because the complementarity of our skill sets and of our energy is so perfect. The things that I love doing, he hates doing. And the things that I hate doing, he loves doing. And so we make like, it is quite literally a perfect team. And I think that combined with the idea that there are often slight adjustments that you can make to energy draining things that make them less energy draining is a powerful notion. An example of that for me was the number one thing to this day that is energy draining in my life is like phone calls and Zoom meetings. Yep. I first did this activity when I was still working in finance. I was working 80, 100-hour weeks. And, look, phone calls and Zoom meetings were basically the number one activity. Like I would have full blocks of days that were just like 10 calls. And I was dead. I mean, super, super draining for me sitting at a computer doing that kind of stuff. And what I noticed was my first reaction was to say like, oh, well, that's just my job. That's all. I have to do that. And then I questioned it. I paused and I was like, well, is that true? Is there a way where I could do this slightly differently? The answer was that I could do some of those phone calls while going out for a walk. And walking calls for me are energy creating. For whatever reason, I like being outside, the fresh air. I have to focus. I can't multitask when I'm on my, on my phone versus on my computer. And so the outcomes improve. I took half my calls, turned them into walking calls, and my whole life changed. I mean, like I felt so different at the end of any given day. The outcomes were better. all of this stuff changed just based on the fact that I had taken the time to pause and ask the question, is that really true? Or is that just a default assumption that I have about the way the work has to get done?
That's good.
Yeah. I think that you just nailed something so specifically important. And that is the idea, like most people just assume the way that the world is the way the world has to be, right? Like, but you're like, wait, I'm going to question that. I'm going to be, a word you use in the book a lot is curious. I'm going to be curious about that, right? Is that actually true?
Have you heard the parable of 3 men make a tiger? This is one of my favorites. So there's this story of a minister goes to a king and he says to the king, if I were to tell you that there's a tiger in the market, what would you say? And the king says, well, I would say that's crazy. And then the minister says, what if I told you 2 people said there's a tiger in the market? The king says, well, then I would question it. And then he says, what if I told you 3 people said there's a tiger in the market? The king says, well, I would believe there's a tiger in the market. And the minister says, there's no tiger in the market, but if 3 people told you and you would believe it, it shows what humanity does, that we believe things when we've been told them enough times. The lesson of that is there are so many things in our lives that we default believe simply because enough people have repeated them. But all of those people that have repeated those things to you, they didn't necessarily think about it before saying it. Those like default cultural assumptions, those things that you've just been told throughout your entire life about definitions of success, about the way that work has to be done, about what your family life should look like, all of these things, it is 3 men make a tiger. Now, the point of that is not to say that you should just default reject all of those ideas. It's just to say that you need to pause, to ask the question, because sometimes when 3 people tell you there's a tiger in the market, there is a tiger in the market. But sometimes there's not. And if you just took the time to question it, to actually just pause and ask yourself that question, you might uncover some of those situations where it's not quite what it seems.
Oh, that's a great story. I never heard that one before. Hey, last question on the time wealth, like, and the idea of energy. What, like personally, what brings you energy in your work? Like, what is like your thing that you can just do and you absolutely love it?
Writing is my number one thing. I mean, if I could do one thing every day and just strip, like, I always ask myself that, like, if I had to do one thing every day and strip away everything else, what would it be? And for me, that's writing. Like I would just sit down and write. I would probably write more creative work. I would write all across the map. I'd read and write, but the writing is sort of a byproduct of the reading.
You and I are the same person. So I just told my wife that the other day. I'm like, if I could just write all day, like if I had a magic wand, I'd just write all day. And she goes, you kind of do have a magic. You can do whatever you want. Like, why don't you just write more? I'm like, I'm just so busy with this and this. She's like, all right, well, either you want it or you don't. Yeah.
I do have one more question on that, and it kind of ties into social as well. But like, how do you, somebody that's incredibly busy, balance working on the things that you love within your business, and then also focusing on your wife and your kids, and how do you balance those things?
Structure. That is the short way of answering all of these things, which is I am a huge believer that you don't just like randomly chance into creating the life you want. You have to actually structure it and sort of design it. That's why design is in the title of the book. That I think you need to take deliberate actions. And one of those deliberate actions is your calendar. I think someone once said, "Don't tell me your priorities, show me your calendar." And I really believe that that's true. I like, if I am trying to focus on something, no matter what it is, whether it's family time, health, work things, whatever, it needs to be on my calendar every single day, structured in. That doesn't mean that I'm one of these people that is like, okay, family time is 4:17 to 5:21, and then I'm in my cold plunge, whatever. It's not quite like that. But I need to know that there are blocks of time on my calendar that are like compartmentalized, like this is family time. And this is like a non-negotiable. Like for me, after 5 p.m. every given day, there's nothing. This is like, we're going for a walk. We're going to make dinner all together. We're doing bath time with the little guy. We're going to bed. And I go to bed at like 8 p.m. I'm like a 90-year-old man because I wake up early. All of those things need to be something that is a non-negotiable daily ritual. It's just built into the way that I live my life. Does that mean that it's perfect every single day when random things come up? Not always, but like 90+%. And 90+%, like you take that over the long run for sure. But the point is, it starts with structure. When you're trying to create any sort of life change, life cadence, it has to be built into the way that you are actually living on a daily basis.
So good.
That's great.
Let's talk social wealth. Can you define that again? I know you mentioned at the beginning, but those who forgot.
Social wealth is just about relationships. I mean, the way that I would think about this is like, it's about depth and it's about breadth. So it's about your kind of depth of those few close, deep relationships. The people that, when you are down and out at 3 a.m, you can call and they will pick up the phone. And you might have 2 people like that. You might have 5 if you're really, really lucky. But the point is that those people, I call them your front row people, the people that will be in the front row at your funeral. We need to cherish those people. We need to invest in those relationships. We need to be a front row person to someone else. And the important mindset shift around all of social wealth, and really all of the types of wealth, but social wealth in particular, is to recognize that investments in your relationships are going to pay dividends just as much as any financial investment you can make. We don't think about relationships that way. We don't think of them as an investment that compounds, but it does. Those investments compound better than any financial investment that you can make. Because at the end of the day, people are really the foundation that builds your financial future and your health and happiness in your life. I mean, every good deal I've been involved in, anything that I've made money around, if I traced its roots, it was a great relationship that was built that ended up leading to it. Warren Buffett always had this thing with negotiations that you're much better off long run leaving every negotiation with both people feeling like they won. Because then you're going to do more deals with the person over the long run, and more deals equals more money over the long term. Treating relationships that way, that you are actually going to treat them with like a mutual respect, that you're going to invest in them, that you're going to, put the daily investments in the same way that $50 in the S&P 500 today is better than zero. It's going to stack, it's going to compound. Same thing applies to investments in relationships, and we need to treat them that way.
That's so good. Yeah, there's another quote from the book I read that I love this quote. Conventional wisdom says one should focus on the journey, not the destination. I disagree. Focus on the people. When you surround yourself with inspiring people, the journeys become more beautiful and the destination becomes more brilliant.
Yeah.
That's so good, man.
I just feel like over and over again in my own life, I have learned this lesson that it's about the people. The Harvard study of adult development is this amazing study. It's, I would argue, the most important study of the last 100 years. They followed 1,300 original participants and 700 of their descendants over the course of 85 years. They found that the single greatest predictor of physical health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. It wasn't your cholesterol, your blood pressure. It wasn't your smoking or drinking habits.
That's wild.
It was how you felt about your relationships that determined how well you aged. So what better reason do we need for investing in this one thing that we know is going to create our health, our happiness, our wealth in the long term?
Yeah. I saw the same study. There's a guy who was studying the blue zones, and he was thinking that he would find some correlation where, hey, they don't drink or they do drink or they eat fish or meat. And, he studied one, there's a one in California that's a Mormon community and none of them drink. And then there's one in Italy that they drink red wine every night. And he at the end of his study said there's no correlation upon what they eat, their health. The only correlation I could find is they all have a profound sense of community. That is what leads to a long, happy life.
I was in Italy last week. I went over there for a speaking gig, and I went out for a few runs. I was trying to run early in the morning, so I was out running at like 6:30 one morning in Venice. So it's like all on the water, beautiful. And I was like out on the far side of Venice, and I came across these like 4 guys, old men, like 85, 90-year-old men, who were fishing. And so I'm running by them and I'm looking at them, and they're all smoking cigarettes, ripping cigarettes at 6:30 in the morning, all fishing together and like chatting, laughing, all this stuff. And I was running by them and I just had this like profound realization. I was like, man, all the health optimizers, biohackers, all these people spending millions of dollars, cold plunging, sauning, peptides, whatever, all the stuff that people are doing. these guys are going to outlive all of us. And they are ripping heaters and, like out here every morning at 6:30 with it's because they're out here with their, like they have these friends and these relationships and they have these rituals and these things that are connecting them. We could all learn a thing or two from that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Well, what about those people who are not good at making friends? They're not good at networking. They're not good at any of that. What are your recommendation for like building your social community, building your network, so to speak?
It's one of those funny things in life that no one ever teaches you how to make friends.
Yeah.
And, when you're a kid, you are thrust into these structures that actually allow it to happen, right? School and then university or whatever organizations, clubs, things that you're in. As an adult, you don't really have those. And if you are not a church-going person, you really don't have them. Church and religious institutions, one of their huge benefits outside of, all of the spirituality is the community that it creates, the people that you get to be around that have shared values. I go back to that when I think about making friends as an adult. I am not a naturally particularly extroverted person. I actually consider myself probably a bit socially anxious when it comes to big groups and crowds. What I have done a really good job of is found what I call value-aligned rooms, meaning places where you are likely to find a high density of people who have shared values to you. And whatever those values are, if you're really into health and wellness, gyms are a great place to meet potential friends. That's not like you're going to a gym being like, hey, I want to meet friends doing those things. You were just in an environment where you are going to be around people that have similar values to you that you are probably going to get along with on some level because of those shared values. If you're into health, going to farmers markets. If you're into your dog, spend time in dog parks. Like if you're into art, there's art gallery openings, there's music things, there's book clubs. All of these things are available to us and they're out there. What you need to do is think about what some of your kind of big picture values are. And then what are places where other people with those shared values are going to exist or be spending time? Place yourself in those rooms. I guarantee you will end up finding more of those connections and relationships as an adult.
In the real estate world, there's kind of this weird phenomenon. It's kind of in the entrepreneurship world too. I see it in the startup world, but I think it's way bigger in real estate. Is that every city in America, pretty much any city over, call it 10,000 people in America, has a real estate club, like a meetup of just real estate investors who get together. There's just thousands of them across the country. They happen every week, every month. They're all over. And I've been to tons of them. I go to them all the time. Why? Because it's like we have shared values. We all care, but we're all just real estate investing nerds. We're all old landlord. Like it'd be like 85-year-old landlord there talking about all the illegal things he does as a landlord. And then you have like 21-year-old kid there who's just like trying to figure it out because he just read a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he wants to get into real estate. So it's fun to get in those rooms. And most of my best friends in life have come from either one of those rooms or from a mastermind or something that I paid to be in a room. That's where all my friends come from.
What's the opinion, by the way, on this podcast of Rich Dad Poor Dad? I only recently found out that this is like a controversial book.
It's like the Bible for 99% of the people that listen. To
it's like
podcast.
It's like the Bible. Okay, so I was on the Bigger Pockets. I'll give you. I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast for a decade, one of the, huge show. And I interviewed 500 real estate investors. 90+% of them named Rich Dad Poor Dad as the book that inspired them, right? So everyone loves that book for that reason. Kiyosaki, though, the author, I've got to know him decently well over the last few years. He's an old curmudgeony man with very strong opinions that just go against what mainstream, stuff that you would, I don't want to say racist, but strong beliefs on certain things.
It's the author has kind of done things
I think it's the author that drives it. He's just such a curmudgeony old man.
Interesting.
That just says the sky's always falling. It's the recession's always happening.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
That was just an aside for me. I've just always been curious.
A lot of investors, myself in particular, like we were raised in the Dave Ramsey, like debt is bad. And then we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And all of a sudden we realized that no, debt can be used as a wealth building tool. So it completely changed my view on how money works. Because I was like, I'm going to get a job making $100,000 a year. I'm going to live off of $65,000. I'm going to save $35,000 a year, do that till I'm 70. And hopefully I have enough money to survive the rest of my life. And so just a game-changing book for so many people.
On that note, then, how do you view debt versus the risk? I know you do venture capital stuff. So how do you view debt? How do you view the security on that? And how would you recommend people view that in kind of the financial world?
I spent the first 7 years of my career working at a private equity fund. So debt was definitely a friend, right? Like we were doing leverage buyouts and very familiar with the math on how debt can amplify returns across all of these different areas of your life. And frankly, look, like the reason home ownership has been such a great wealth creation vehicle for people is it is the one area of your life where you can get someone to lever you up 80% on a deal and go buy something at such a low rate historically. And yes, like land value, prices went up, but it's also just 80% super, super cheap debt, which you can't really get in any other area. And so I would say my general opinions on debt are entirely based on your personal, like kind of psychological and emotional disposition. I think that debt can be a great tool for building wealth, but only if you are comfortable with it as a tool. I think that there are people that are going to take on debt and they're going to stress about it nonstop and be wanting to pay it off. And then there are going to be people that are comfortable with it and understand, sort of how to manage it in the right quantum and never get sideways with it and be in a fine position. Generally speaking, I would say in all of these spaces, there are better guardrails now that prevent you from getting sideways as an individual with too much debt. Doesn't always happen, but the guardrails are more so in place now than they were pre-2008 to sort of prevent people from being able to like massively overlever without, people really taking notice. For me personally, I have a mortgage on my house. I don't think I will ever be like debt free in that way. But I could see a world where I would be happier completely paying off my house and just like not having to think about the fact that I owe a bank money, just for this pure emotional, psychological. And this is coming from someone who has a 2.5% rate on their house, right? Like it would make no sense financially if I were to put this on paper for me to pay that off. But I can understand the human psychology that would lead to me wanting to do that.
Yeah, that kind of goes to the point you make in the book, right, about the scorecard. Like, there's a book out there called Lifeinaire. It's like the word millionaire, but with the word life. I read it a few years ago. But they make the same point. It's like, if the scorecard that you're playing or the goal of the game to win is to get as much money as humanly possible, then things like paying off your mortgage, that doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. But if the goal of your life is different, if there's another goal like peace or security or whatever, then we got to play by different rules, and the financial rules don't necessarily apply. So, I have a mortgage, but
there's always like, it's always funny. Like a lot of these arguments break down, right? Like I've heard people tell me like, oh yeah, I paid off my mortgage because I don't want to feel like someone else owns my property. And, my response to that is, well, someone else does own your property. The government owns your property.
The government.
Yeah. Like if you don't pay your property taxes, they can come seize your house. And they will. Actually, like that literally happens. And so we live in a country where you actually never own your property in the United States. That is how property taxes work. And yes, that's a totally separate conversation. That does seem crazy in a certain light, depending on how you shine a light on it. But you like paying off your mortgage does not mean that you are like, totally scot-free on owning your place all out.
Yeah, totally agreed. All right, so picture this. I just signed a lease with a tenant. They seemed great on paper. Then a few months in, everything kind of started going sideways. Suddenly, they're missing rent deadlines. There's a broken window. The neighbors are complaining about them. I realized I'd put someone in my rental property without properly screening them. And now I was living a landlord's nightmare. But lucky for you, you don't have to make the same mistakes as I made early on because you have the luxury of using TurboTenant. So if you're managing any rental properties right now, and you're still trying to vet tenants and collect rent and keep track of work orders and market all your vacancies, look, TurboTenant is going to be your best friend. It's an app that allows you to do all of that and so much more, all in the same platform. Plus, it's like stupid cheap, like seriously less than your Netflix subscription. I don't even know why it's so cheap. And if you want it even cheaper, I got a discount for you. Just go to turbotenant.com/betterlife and use code Brandon10 for 10% off. Or go to my Instagram and DM me the word toolbox, and I'll send you a link to a bunch of cool free tools that they have, like the rent estimator, financial freedom calculator, and more. Hey, let's move on to mental wealth. Now, in that chapter, there was a term you used. I'm going to probably butcher the terminology. I think it's a Japanese word, ikigai. How am I doing on that?
Not pretty good. Ikigai, I think.
Okay. Can
Yeah.
you explain what is that? It's like the center of like three different things, but how does that work, and why does it relate to that mental kind of area?
Ikigai, I think, was sort of formalized as a concept within the Western world. It really rose to prominence with this whole blue zone idea of like, why were these Okinawans and Japanese in this small island living so long? And one of the concepts was this idea of Ikigai, this idea of finding your like life purpose. We now have a pretty robust body of scientific evidence to suggest that having a clear purpose improves your longevity. You actually your all-cause mortality goes down if you have a clear sense of purpose. Ikigai is sort of a formal framework for thinking about uncovering your purpose. It is at the center of, it depends on how you look at it, but these kind of three circles: what you love to do, what you're good at doing, and then what the world needs. And that definition of world is kind of important. You could think about the world in the context of like a small unit, like your family. Like, what does your family need from you during this season of your life? You could think about it on the broad scale of the world. But the point is that you're sort of identifying the things that are like interest, passions, that's what you love, competencies, that's what you're good at, and then what actually people sort of need from you during this season of your life. And the intersection of those three tends to be something where you can kind of uncover that feeling of purpose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you could really enjoy playing video games, like you get a lot of, but the world doesn't need more people to play video games, so therefore maybe that's not your life purpose. And your family
certainly doesn't need you to play more video games. Like if you were trying to be a provider and that's your world, is your like wife and son. I sort of think of my world as like, at the most atomic unit, my purpose as a human being is to take care of my wife and son and make sure I provide for them. I really believe that. I know it's a somewhat traditional view. It's what I believe. And, if I had to flip burgers at McDonald's to do that, I would do it. And like, I would just have to do that and I would make it happen. So when I think of the world, I really think on that most distilled level, deconstructed view. That's my world. What do they need from me? Okay, well, they may need me to make sure that they have a roof over their heads and food, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the most basic primitive things. And so I need to make sure that that is covered in whatever it is that I'm spending my time on, where I might uncover that purpose.
Cool.
Makes sense.
So, and I know they should read your book to find out more, but in a minute or less, somebody comes to you and is like, hey, I need to find my purpose. Like, what would you tell them to go do? I know that's a deep question and a longer answer than that.
Minute or less. No, I would, well, first off, I would just tell them that like, your purpose doesn't have to be your work. That's the number one thing to realize. Everyone thinks like, oh, purpose has to be work. That is just not true. There's plenty of people out there who like the work is in service of something at a higher order. And frankly, for me, like if I had to, I would do any job to provide for my higher order purpose, which is providing for my family, for the people that I love in my world. And there's plenty of people out there who do that. They punch the clock every single day and show up and grind to provide for their family, to create the world that they want, to be the father or the mother that they didn't have in their own life. So that's number one. The second thing I would say is think about energy and competency. Energy is the things that we talked about earlier that you feel pulled towards. Competency is the skills, the things that feel easy to you, the things that you can do at a very high level. If you can find things at the intersection of your competency and energy, things where you are good and you feel energized, that is where you're going to start feeling a connection and a feeling of purpose around the work.
I love it. Hey, what are some tactical things people can do to improve their sort of mental wealth? Or what do you do?
The Think Day is my number one favorite. This is in the mental wealth guide section. This idea of once a month, schedule a time, put it on your calendar where you are going to get into a new environment. Don't go to your office. Don't do it at your house. Go to a new place that feels different, because your brain follows patterns when you're in familiar environments. What you want to do is get out of that so you can think bigger. You're going to go to a new space and you're going to go with some question prompts to just zoom out and think about the bigger picture of your life, your work, the things that you're focused on. Entire goal here is to create space to actually think about some of those bigger picture questions, about where your priorities are, what you're focusing on, whether your systems are aligned with the goals you're trying to drive towards, whether there's something that you're just kind of blinded to because of how in the weeds you are in the current stuff you're working on. Just zoom out and actually get an hour once a month where you're just going to think about some of these bigger picture things, and you get a ton of value in your life.
That's so good, man. Yeah, I love that. I think you even alluded to it in the book about like Bill Gates has his like think week, which I always think like how great would that be to go disappear for a week with a pile of books to the woods? I'm like, not with 3 little kids at home. Like
Not in any time soon in your life, my friend.
Exactly. But a day
or mine.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the life-changing magic of 1 hour of thinking kind of convinces me that I don't need a week. I think I would go crazy if I had a full week fully off the grid. An hour, 2 hours, no phone, just bring a notebook to journal, think on some of the bigger picture questions, have your favorite coffee, be outside, whatever. Like, it's incredible, the value. And viewing that as productive and that it can be a total unlock, an asymmetric investment to create that new growth. Every single time I do one of those, I come out with some new insight that sparks something in my life.
Yeah, I started doing. I've said this a lot on the show, but my favorite time of the week, I schedule a 90-minute massage every week at my house, and it's like in the same spot. It's for the exact reason. I mean, yeah, massages are nice, but like what I want is like to force me to have no phone. I always give myself a prompt when I start, and I sit there for an hour and a half and I think. And every time I make significantly more money or improve my life far more than what that the $250 or whatever cost for a massage is. It's the most productive, profitable thing I do all week long because it just forces me to think.
Yeah, I'd say that one of the most significant challenges facing any quote unquote ambitious person who self-defines as ambitious is to reframe free time and rest as a part of your performance rather than as a reward for your efforts. The way that we normally think as ambitious people is to say like, okay, I get that rest as a reward for working hard during the week. Like I worked hard, so now I need this unwind. It's actually, you need to have like an elite athlete mentality where that is actually a part of you being able to perform at the highest level. It's not a reward, it's part of the system.
Yeah. Dude, that's a life-changing piece of advice for anybody that's listening to this. And I'm looking at my own life where I used to every Friday go sit at a coffee shop and drink coffee and for 2 hours just journal. And I don't have time for that now, but it's negatively impacted my life and my business in ways that I would love to change, where it's like that time is worth it. It's recharging, it's resting, and it adds to my business and to my life with my family, with my kids, with everything. So that
reminds me of that quote. That reminds me of that quote. What is like, if you don't have an hour to pray every day, you need 2 hours of prayer or something like that. It's like, it's the idea of like, if you don't have an hour once a week for thinking time, you probably need more than an hour.
But even the athlete, and that makes so much sense. And I've never heard it described that way. That just connected like a ton of dots where it's like,
well, hopefully it's an unlock for you. Now I want to hear from you how this, now you're going to get back into it on the back of this. You got to take action on it.
Yeah. That's the key here, right? Like it's easy to read a book like this and be like, I'm going to do all this stuff different and then take no action. Look, what do you recommend for people in that spot? Like how do you take action?
I think, dopamine from information gathering is a dangerous drug. That is the dopamine that you get when you read Atomic Habits and you say to yourself, like, I'm good at habits now.
Yeah.
But you haven't done anything yet. You haven't actually gone and taken action on the thing. And so with all of this stuff, we need to start learning to get our dopamine from action. It's great. The awareness that you just created by gathering information is incredible. But the most successful people in the world, the common thread that I have observed is that they have a razor thin gap between information and action. Information and the gathering of information, and then they immediately act on that information. We all need to adopt that. And the important point there is that the action can be tiny. The action could be that you spend 5 minutes coming out of this, scheduling that first think day. Or it could be that you are going to, look at your calendar for the energy calendar. You're going to make those color codes for the day. It takes 5 minutes. It's a tiny thing, but the momentum from that could change your life.
Yeah, so good. All right, we got a few more minutes left. I got 2 more categories to hit. Let's talk physical real quick, and then we'll move to and close with financial. Physical wealth. How do you, like person, I'm curious you, how do you maintain your physical wealth, and what recommendations do you have for the listeners?
I think the most important thing with physical wealth is to recognize that it is like a video game, meaning you don't have to worry about level 100 when you're just starting at level 1. And the reason that's important is because the world of physical wealth, you are bombarded by information from people doing level 100. You're hit on social media by all the people doing the fanciest routines, all these morning routines that have been going viral, doing mouth taping and cold plunging and sauning. None of them have kids, by the way. None of them have real jobs. And so taking advice and making you feel bad because you think that's what health looks like is counterproductive. The reality is that you just need to think about these 3 pillars: movement, nutrition, and recovery. Level 1 of all of those, it's like movement, move for 30 minutes a day. However, walking, jogging, biking, surfing, dancing, whatever you like doing, move for 30 minutes a day. Nutrition, try to eat whole unprocessed foods 80% of your meals. And then recovery, try to sleep 7 hours a night on average during the week. If you can do those 3 things, you're ahead of 80% of people in the physical wealth domain. And that's a start. That's level 1. From there, you can think about getting more complicated with things and advancing and moving up. But that's really the starting point that gets most people the momentum that they need.
Yeah, that's really good. Are you a cold plunge sauna guy?
I do have a cold plunge and a sauna. I love doing both. They've been a great part of my routine. I would say more for mental health than physical. I sort of view the physical health benefits of either of those as like upside to what I get from them mentally. For me, the cold plunge first thing in the morning is like the energy boost and the like getting locked in and feeling sort of that feeling of like being a badass to start the day, like doing something hard. It has ripple effects. And then the sauna in the evening, that's like my like unwind time. It's 20 minutes. You can't have your phone in there. So I read things, I sort of think, I meditate, do all of that stuff.
Yeah. I try to do a sauna every day. I have the cold plunge sitting next to the sauna. I probably hit that once a week when Cam comes over. But I absolutely love both those. And like you said, for the mental more than anything, it's like, that's my unwind time for sure. That sauna. Yeah. I love it. Last question on the physical stuff. What recommendations do you have for getting better sleep? I struggle with sleep, especially as a parent with young kids, but what's your best tips on sleep?
I used to be a really bad sleeper. I would say 2 things have fundamentally changed that for me. One is a like 2 or 3 minute pre-bed journaling thing that I do. I used to be like have a lot of anxiety. I would go into bed and just stare at the ceiling, like mind racing. Yep. Now I do this thing. I call it my 1-1-1 method. I write down 1 win from the day, something that went well, 1 point of stress or anxiety, something that's stressing me out, and then 1 point of gratitude, something that I felt good about, that made me feel grateful during the day. I write that down on a blank sheet of paper in a journal before going to bed. It takes 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. And I immediately kind of like trigger this sense of calm, helps me go to sleep, fall asleep faster, gets those things off my brain. Mm-hmm. The second one is when I'm struggling to fall asleep, I do something called the 4-7-8 method, which is a breathing pattern that triggers your rest and relaxation, helps you fall asleep faster. It's a 4-second inhale through the nose, hold for a 7 count, and then an 8-second exhale through the mouth. Do like 3 to 5 reps of that, quote unquote, and you feel like a sense of calm come over your body, fall asleep much more quickly.
Yeah. Perfect. Headspace has a great 4-7-8 breathing meditation. It'll put you asleep in 5 minutes. It's insane. If I wake up in the middle of the night and can't fall asleep.
Oh, I got to check that out.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, man. Financial wealth. Obviously, this is a financial podcast for the most part, so most people are pretty obsessed with this. But I want to start with the idea of enough being enough. You kind of started the chapter on, or the whole section on financial wealth is how much, when is enough enough? And I get that question a lot. Why did you start it that way? Why do we need to frame it from that standpoint?
I think that understanding your definition of what your enough life actually looks like is really the antidote to this entire chase for more and more that many of us find ourselves on. And that is the road to misery. That chase for more and more money with no sense of the life that it is actually trying to create, the using money as a tool, but not the goal. That is really, really important for people to internalize. And the reason I talk about what your enough life looks like is because numbers are prone to disappearing and reappearing. You say like, oh, I want to make $10 million, then that'll be enough. You get close to 10 and you're like, well, maybe I'll make 30. Those numbers just disappear. But the life that you are trying to build towards, that is much harder to have disappear. If you have a clear vision of what that life looks like. Actually, earlier, Cameron, you talked about this in the context of looking at your journal. And you saw like, oh, I'm actually living that out those prayers that I had. Having that as a clear picture in front of you on a more daily basis, huge benefit to your overall life. To understand like, oh, I'm actually doing those things. So now if I want to pursue more, it's going to be grounded in a feeling of purpose. It's going to be grounded in experiences that I'm trying to create with people I love, or in my health, or in these other areas of my life, not necessarily just chasing more money for the sake of more money.
Yeah. One of the, it was actually a pastor who was preaching on just financial wealth and then how to handle it. And one of the life-changing things that he said, and your book reminded me a lot about it, where the title of the series was You in 5 Years. And he talked about how so many people would look at this as the first stepping stone of being happy. And they say, well, once I'm financially set, then I can give more, spend more time with my kids, or spend more time with doing the things that I love. And just our brains don't work like that. In 5 years, there's not going to be a flip or a switch that we flip, and all of a sudden we're going to love our kids more. It starts like today, being giving. Like in 5 years, we're not going to flip a switch and all of a sudden be giving. Like it starts today. And so as I was reading through your book, that kept coming back and back and back, where it's like these first four things to me are like, if you focus on those, the wealth will take care of itself. And it might not even be financial. It might not even be a financial thing, but you are going to be off the charts in terms of happiness and contentment with life if you focus on the first four things, and then the financial part will take care of itself, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but
yeah, I mean, I'll end with this thought because I think it's exactly related to what you said, which is that later is the most dangerous word in the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly use the word later in our own lives. We say, I'll spend more time with my kids later. I'll focus on my health later. I'll prioritize my marriage later. I'll, focus on these friendships later. I'll find my purpose and freedom later. The sad thing is that later just becomes another word for never, because those things aren't going to exist in the same way later. Your kids aren't going to be 5 years old later. Your marriage will not be there for you later if you're not there for that person now. You won't magically wake up with freedom and purpose later. So either we find a way to design those things into our life right now in some tiny way, invest in them, or we're just going to end up regretting it later.
That's so good, man. So good. All right, man. We're going to get you out of here. Thank you so much for being on this show, man. I love it. I love the book, The 5 Types of Wealth. People can get it anywhere. I'm assuming Amazon, all the good places, Barnes & Noble, whatever. Is there a place you want people to go? Does it drive rankings higher if they go to a certain place?
No, wherever you like to pick up books.
All right, man.
And I'd love to hear from everyone, so send me a message.
Yeah, where do you want people to connect with you at? Like, where's your favorite spot?
Absolutely, wherever you find me, at Sahil Bloom on all the major platforms. You can send me an email, sahil@sahilbloom.com. Would love to hear from you. Always want to hear from readers, how you're interacting with the book, so please reach out. That's me on all the platforms. I don't have a team managing it. Would love to hear from you.
Sahil, thank you so much. You're awesome, man. Appreciate you. And that, my friends, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, or if you just enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback, and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people, and the more reviews we get, the more people hear it and watch the show and share it, and it's awesome. Last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider befriending me, following me, subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon, especially over on Instagram, YouTube, and really everywhere else. So thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. Now, this show is about living a better life, but if you want my opinion on what it takes to live the best life ever, just go to abetterlife.com/best life to hear some of my views on life and spirituality. I think you'll like it. abetterlife.com/best life. With that said, thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next week.